Now it's my pleasure to introduce this morning's guest, Lupe Valdez, the Democratic candidate for governor of Texas in 2018. Ms. Valdez faces 8 fellow Democrats in the March primary. If she wins her party's nomination, she'll likely face Republican incumbent Greg Abbott in the November general. Her first run for statewide office comes after a long career in law enforcement that includes stints as an agent at both U.S. Customs and Border Protection and the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. Most recently, she spent nearly 13 years as the elected sheriff of Dallas County. She's also a veteran of the United States Army, from which she retired with the rank of captain. Born in San Antonio, Ms. Valdez has an undergraduate degree from Southern Nazarene University and a master's degree from the University of Texas at Arlington. Please join me in welcoming Lupe Valdez.
Thank you. Hey,
Ma'am, good to see you. Appreciate
I
you
see
being
why
here.
you hate this.
Yeah. Well, it's a different microphone day. We're both in the same position on this, so how you doing?
Good, thank you.
Good to be with you.
And I see why he doesn't like it.
Not great. It's okay. We're going to make it work. We're going to make it work. So I'm interested in why you're running, Ms. Valdez, and I'm interested in particular in when you decided to run. We were aware of your interest as far back as November the 6th when our reporter Patrick Svitek wrote in a Tribune that you had talked to him and you had said you were considering running. I'm wondering at what point you thought about getting in this race. You don't wake up one day and decide, I want to be governor. So where along the continuum were you? When did you decide?
Well, there
were
several things that happened. Of course, first of all was the last session.
Right.
That was sort of disheartening, to say the least. But one of my strongest points was when in a newspaper I saw a picture of a child that I assume was a transgender child. I don't know that. And it had a look of fear and panic in the child's face. And they were grabbing on to a leg. I'm assuming it was a guardian. I don't know if it was a male or a female. But I'm just describing the picture. But as I saw that picture, it tore my heart. I mean, I just looked at this child and I said, what are we doing to our children?
Right.
What are we doing to our children? We should be helping them assimilate into society. We should be helping them enjoy their childhood. Instead, we're causing fear and terror and panic, and it was just very, very painful to me. And it was one of those times when I said, "Ya basta," enough. This is enough.
Right.
And I think that was more or less the turning point. There were several times when it was painful to hear.
Yeah.
But when I saw that, it was just. You either sit there and do nothing and gripe, or you stand up and do something.
Now, you could have run for anything else. Of course, you'd been successful in your campaigns for sheriff going back, as I said, nearly 13 years, elected first in 2004. You could have run for state representative, could have run for state senate. You chose to run for governor. I asked the same question of Andrew White, your principal opponent in that race last week. I'm going to ask it of you today. Why are you qualified to be governor? What about the work you've done as sheriff? What about your life qualifies you for this high office?
Well, I'm glad you asked. Well, first of all, the governor sets the tone for the state.
Right.
And right now, I really don't care for the tone. There's a lot of fear and hate and anger and division. I know we'll never agree on everything with anybody. I'm sure you and I have several differences, and every person here, there will be differences.
Yep.
But we've got to find a way to work together. And the tone that is being said is more about division than bringing together.
Yep.
And the qualification. I have the experience. I ran the 7th largest department in the United States.
Right.
2,800 employees.
Right.
It changed daily. And a budget of anywhere from, in the 13 years, anywhere from 140 million to 153 million.
Right.
I have the experience to run a challenging situation where people don't agree.
Of course, you're talking about a 2,800 employee department.
Yes.
This is a 28 million person state. You're talking about 100 plus million sheriff's department. You're talking about a $212 billion state budget. It's a bump up in responsibility.
Of course. We wouldn't look for a bump down.
Right.
We're certainly going to look for a bump up.
Right.
And if you know the principles of good management and the principles of bringing people together and letting them face the challenges together, then the principles are laid out, whether it be billions or millions.
Let me drill down on the rationale for running.
Okay.
Are you running to accomplish something or to fix something? Are you running to do something that's not being done, or are you running to undo something that's being done now?
I think it's pretty much both.
Both.
Of course.
Right.
First of all, if you know anything about my history, the department that I took was known for abuse and was known for mistreatment. And it wasn't so much that the people were wanting to do that, it was that they didn't have the resources and they didn't have the leadership. So I think the same principles continue to go on.
Right.
We need to get the principles of learning to work together, learning to be a Texans together. We're all Texans, and we all love Texas. So we need to learn to come together and work together. We're never going to get everything we want.
Right.
But we can't get anything if we don't start cooperating with each other. And I'm pretty sure I can do that. I can bring people together.
I want to ask you about, as a potential rationale for this, you as a symbol.
Okay.
You have a very interesting, unusual bio for a person running for governor of the state of Texas. You would be the first openly gay governor of Texas. You would be the first Latina governor of Texas. You'd certainly be the first governor of Texas who had worked the fields and who was the child of migrant workers.
I love it.
You are, in a lot of ways, a symbol to people, and I wonder the degree to which bio is driving this as opposed to substance. A lot of people see you as a symbol and want you to be a symbol. In fact, the national press, in its wonderful reductiveness, just likes to have the words gay Latina in all their headlines. LA Times, gay Latina. The Guardian, gay Latina.
I often like to say the gay Latina does have a name.
Right,
but
they don't bother to put your name in there. They just say gay Latina. We just call you GL for short, okay? And what's interesting to me is when Abbott announces that he's running for re-election, or Andrew White says he's running, you don't see the headline say, straight Anglo runs to lead state with fewer than 50% straight Anglos. You don't get that. But I wonder the degree to which you're comfortable with that role as a symbol. Are you running as the gay Latina candidate?
No. I'm honored that at this point I'm comfortable with it.
Yeah.
At some point when somebody said that, it was extremely uncomfortable because it wasn't as accepted as it is now.
Right.
But I don't care how you look at my qualifications, just as long as you look at them.
So this is not about vote for me because of who I am.
No,
It's vote for me because of what I'll do.
What I can do.
Right.
And in many of those situations, I can identify with people. Don't forget the veterans. I was a veteran also. I am a veteran also.
20 years? How long?
12.
12 years in the service, right, yeah.
I've even forgotten.
Right, right. So you feel like at various points along the continuum, aspects of your bio connect you to different groups of Texas.
Honestly, as much as we have differences, we have common things together. And I would like to emphasize more the common things than the differences. And I represent a lot of things that people have: the ethnic group, the sex, the sexuality, the vet, the hardworking, the coming from little to learning how to get educated.
Right.
And I did have to learn how to get educated. And now we want to provide a method so that we don't have to struggle as much to get there.
Well, I'm glad to hear you say that it's about what you will do, because I want to talk about what you will do. You've been criticized in the press for the 6 weeks you've been in this race for not offering very many specifics on policy. And I've been going to your website every single day to look for issues on the website, and instead all I have found is a picture of you on a horse. And I thought this was a test.
Don't you think that's a good picture?
No, it's a great picture, but I'm like, where's the issues tab? I started to click on hoofs, thinking this is like that mental competency test the president took the other day. If I click on the right hoof, an issues tab will come up. But you know what? I got up at 5 o'clock in the morning
and
today.
And there was issues.
And lo and behold, overnight, an issues tab, the issues fairy provided me with a little gift this morning. I know it's a coincidence, I'm sure, the timing of this. So we can talk specifics, because now I have some specifics.
And we have been discussing that for a while. I don't know if you've listened to points that I've made.
Well, as recently as this weekend, though, Sheriff, you said, I'm not going to put my policy positions out right now. I'm glad that you actually did.
No, not the, step by step.
Well, I'm glad that you've at least dipped your toe in that water, so let's go there. But actually, I'm going to start with something that is, interestingly, not on your issues page.
Okay.
The issue that we associate with you because of the initial flap you had with Governor Abbott back in 2015 was sanctuary cities. Issues tab goes up overnight, not a mention of sanctuary cities, not a mention of immigration, which I think is very interesting. So I want to draw you out on that. Can you talk about what happened in 2015? People associate the sanctuary cities controversy, the fight between Governor Abbott and the sheriff in Travis County. but in fact, before the fight with the sheriff in Travis County, there
started
was a
with
fight
me.
with you. You did not agree with the governor at that time.
I did not.
Right, and you wanted to write the governor a letter explaining at that time why you disagreed, but county attorneys told you could not.
Not to do it.
Okay, they wouldn't let you, I will. So
Thank you.
lay
Thank
out
you.
specifically what
First
it is
of
that
all,
you
I
disagreed
think
with.
that, as before, was a terrible bill. I think it not only caused problems between law enforcement among themselves, but between law enforcement and the community. And
Yeah.
we've heard this over and over again. Law enforcement has got to work at bringing trust into the community.
Right.
For the longest time, and I will admit, for the longest time, there were some officers that got away with things that they shouldn't have got away with. And now we have to double up to try and fix a lot of that.
Yeah.
And when you put a barrier between us and not helping us get to that point, you know, that made a lot of us upset. I wasn't the only one who verbalized, but I think I was, I'm almost wondering if it's females that he comes after, but I wasn't the only one that made some comments about that.
Right.
All the major cities.
Right.
All of the major cities made some comments, but I did want to explain to him
Right.
why we chose certain things that we wanted to do and we needed to do. And I think the way I heard that he presented it wasn't what we were doing. So I wanted to present that to him. But first of all, no law enforcement wants crime in their city. That's a given. Even Sheriff Hernandez, I'm sure. None of us want crime in their city. And again, I still can't figure out what sanctuary cities are.
Well,
or
that's my question. What is the problem that you believe this law attempts to fix? And do you think that there is a legitimate problem in need of fixing?
I do not think there's a problem.
No public safety issue that this
None at
that
all.
this bill
None at
fixes,
all.
right?
I mean, now that it's in there, how has it improved public safety? Those of us that were on the field didn't see any difference. So how did it improve? There was such a promotion about how it was going to improve public
Right.
safety. The only thing it did was cause people to be in fear. And there was a lot of people that are being harmed who would not call the police now.
So the argument that was made at the time that all this is going to do is drive people who would otherwise be as good citizens of the state, even if they were not legal citizens of the state, people who were concerned about reporting crimes or being witnesses to crimes or what have you, that was the fear, that was the argument against this, among others. You believe that's something
And I think it's true.
legitimate.
The police chief in Houston, I think, actually had numbers.
Yeah.
And most of us saw where crime in that area hadn't gone down, it just wasn't reported as much.
Right.
Nobody who was afraid, and we continually said, you know, the local police will not carry out this duty of being eyes, but yet the people are not as trustful of the police to begin with. Why should they believe that we're telling them the truth when we're saying we're going to come help you?
This week, Sheriff, you did a Facebook Live interview with the Rio Grande Guardian, and my colleague Patrick Svitek transcribed some of your comments, and specifically comments on this subject. This is a quote from your Facebook Live interview with the Rio Grande Guardian. Quote, "I don't think Senate Bill 4 is going to be a big change in Texas." This really caught our attention. We thought really every Democrat in the state of Texas
I
thinks
think there was
differently.
a little bit of mistranslation there.
Okay,
When I said that, after the lawsuit,
right.
there's certain things you can and cannot do.
Yeah.
I don't think that changed the attitude of the officers that were going to stop them or the officers that were going to leave it alone. It's still pretty much the same thing. In every situation, there's rogue officers and there's officers that try to do the best for the community.
Yeah.
And in saying there's not going to be that big a change, it's these officers are not going to change what they're doing. They're going to continue to do the same thing that they did before.
So you think that as Democratic mayors, although they're nonpartisan as elected, but the mayors of Austin and San Antonio, Houston, Dallas, suing the state or suing over this, you believe that's the correct decision?
Yes, as
Yeah.
far as of course, you would have to ask them why.
Well, they've
they
already
think they
indicated their preference. I guess my point is we took this comment in the Rio Grande Guardian thing to be a little bit out of sync with Democrats
and it did
who
when it
opposed
was-
this bill.
I agree with you. I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
When it was translated as such, it came out. When we saw it, the first thing somebody said was, "Oh, you better look at this."
That's not what you intended.
What our intent is to say,
Right.
if there's good officers and there's bad officers.
Right.
Good officers are going to continue to do what they did. and rogue officers are going to continue to do. So
Right.
it's going to be pretty much the same,
Right.
and nothing can restrict
So
them.
as governor, just to be clear on this before we move on, as governor, you would be an advocate for getting rid of the law that
Totally,
just passed.
totally.
Okay.
Let's do laws that help people
Right.
and take away the fear, not laws that divide us.
So you mentioned the transgender child you saw a photograph of at the beginning of this interview, who was in some respects the inspiration for you to sign.
I assumed it was a transgender child. I don't know that.
Peace. When you talked about the bathroom bill, the so-called bathroom bill in San Antonio last Friday, what you actually talked about in terms of your opposition to this bill was the business argument. You said that business leaders should not have to beg the governor to do the right thing.
By all means.
I took from that, and I take from your comments today, you oppose that legislation.
Totally.
Right. But
Totally.
is it that you oppose it on the grounds that it'll hurt the economy, or do you oppose it because it is discriminatory, as number of opponents said during the legislative session, or both? Where do you come down on that bill?
Pretty much both. First
Yeah.
of all, in all of my 42 years of law enforcement, I never heard of a case where a person dressed up as a woman went in and committed a crime in a bathroom. I can tell you.
You challenge the premise of that.
I can
public
tell you
safety
many
premise,
weird
right.
cases.
Right.
There's many weird cases, but I never heard that one. The other one is, we're interested in business. I think the Democrats get bummed in a couple of areas: business, religion, and I forgot the third one. No, I'm just kidding.
Oops, I think you're
I'm just
supposed to say
kidding.
oops now, actually.
Oh,
Right,
sorry.
right, yeah.
Oops, I forgot
Right,
the
yeah.
third one. And the third one is patriotism.
Right.
You know, I think it's the children of the waitress, the children of the factory worker, the children of the teacher that are going to enlist and be in the wars. Those are the people, and the Democrats are the majority of those folks. I don't know why we allow the other side to steal patriotism from us. We're as patriotic as anybody else, and I spent 12 years proving that. Now, going back to what you're saying, there's 3 areas where I think we don't have as good publicity as the other side, and one of them is business. We truly believe in jobs and business and providing a fair wage and providing a decent living, and the businesses are not against that.
Well, let me ask you about that, though, and stay on this question of the business community and the Democratic Party. So the business community was unhappy about the bathroom bill. Peace.
Of course.
Accepted.
It
But
hurts
as I,
the
but
Texas
as I look
brand.
at the last couple of weeks, and I get email after email from the Abbott for Governor campaign, Texas Association of this endorses Governor Abbott, Texas Association of that endorses Governor Abbott. They're not endorsing Governor Abbott against Secede Kilgore. They're endorsing Governor Abbott against the Democrats. If the business community is so upset about the bathroom bill, as you say, why are they endorsing the guy who supported it?
You know, the majority of the associations and businesses will go with the incumbent. They will always go with the incumbent. And another thing that I found is when a group endorses, that doesn't mean that the rank and file are going to follow.
So you believe that the rank and file may not be reflected in the support that the associations provide
It's happened to me for 13 years.
to the governor?
In 13 years in
you
Dallas.
mentioned that the fair you've actually talked about, when you announced, you talked about raising the minimum wage. That was one of the things that you said on announcement day. And if you go to this now fabled issues tab on your website, all of about 7 hours or 4 hours, there is a
Brand
mention.
new for you.
Thank you very much. There is a mention of equal pay for equal work
Of
and
course.
a fair wage. I had to look it up today to be sure I knew. You know what the minimum wage is in Texas right now?
7 something?
$7.25. There was legislation in the last session to raise that to $10.10. Didn't go anywhere. What exactly can the governor do on this, first of all? It's not really the governor can't just wake up one
Of
day and
course, of
proclaim
course.
the minimum wage shall be blank.
The governor cannot really pass any laws, but
Right.
they can work as the leader and the tone and set the tone
Right.
for what's going to happen.
So you be an advocate.
Of
In the
course.
same way that Governor Abbott can't actually lower property taxes, but he can be an advocate for lowering property taxes. You can be an advocate for raising the minimum wage, even though you can't do it.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
What
And
should
we-
it be?
and,
What's the right number?
we should start out with a livable wage, and I think it will be
What is that?
steps. Somewhere between 12 and 15.
Okay. How are you going to persuade the business? Well, so a couple things. First of all, where the state, as I understand from Ross Ramsey, my colleague who is much smarter than me on this stuff, what the state can do, and it's really the legislature can do, is affect a component of this, which is the sort of state workers. But you cannot compel private businesses to raise their minimum wage.
You know, most of the
How do you get the business community to see it's in their economic interest to raise the minimum wage?
most of the businesses are interested in having a solid workforce. Included in that, of course, will be education.
But haven't they been interested to this point, Sheriff? And if they were so interested up to this point, why haven't they raised the minimum wage up to this point?
And some of them have. Quite a few of them have. We just have to encourage the others and help them find ways to be able to get there. Quite a few of the businesses are there. I was shocked, just as you are, to find out that the minimum wage was $7, when quite a few businesses are already quite a bit higher than that.
Right.
We just help we need to help the other ones
So
come
you're,
along.
so you're coming as governor, and you campaign on the idea that state workers at least should be paid more than the minimum wage of $7.25.
I think the state workers, I'm not sure, but I think they're pretty close. They're above that.
But you'd like to see
worker.
that number go up, is the
Of
point.
course.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
I mentioned property taxes.
And teachers.
Yes.
Let's not forget the teachers. And
Well,
they are state
well,
employees.
but again, Sheriff Valdez, that's another thing where it's possible to be a politician and to advocate for an increase, but in fact, the governor cannot raise teachers' salaries.
No, but you
We
can do
discovered this
things.
during the special session when there was an agenda item that required or suggested a $1,000 increase in teacher pay. That was effectively a $700 million unfunded mandate on school districts. Governor can't affect that.
No, but they can do things to help it. We've all known about several different areas where there's loopholes. And there's always the rainy day fund. You're not going to drain it, but you're going to help out.
So you would like to see, so if you're Governor Valdez tomorrow, you advocate for the rainy day fund being spent
Not
on some of the
totally.
things we're talking about?
Not totally. We need to spend it on the things that are going to help the average Texan.
Okay, list them.
Roads and bridges, education, jobs.
So you'd like to see the rainy day fund spent on those workaday things. The tradition has been to only spend it on one-time things, not on consistent expenses over time.
Well, I think if we do a one-time hit and help elevate some of those procedures, then there will be other methods to help it along. But we've got to start with a strong foundation, and we can do some of that with we can do the strong foundation with the rainy day fund. Right. Not all, of course, we need to keep some of it, but we also need to, sometimes we want to say to the people, it's raining out there. Let's use the rainy day fund. It's been raining.
But of course, there are those who, to push back on that would be, look, we didn't expect Hurricane Harvey. We're going to have enormous expenses associated with the rebuild of the state. Had those who advocated for spending money in the rainy day fund been successful during the previous session or sessions before, we would not have the money available now when it actually rained. So where is the proper balance here?
And you didn't use all of it.
Right.
You used what was necessary. The same thing for the other ones. It's the education, it's the infrastructure, all of that stuff needs to have some boost. Yeah. And we need to go ahead and give it a boost.
Let me ask you about the property taxes. So the governor, we mentioned property taxes in the context of the economy. Governor Abbott came out the Abbott campaign came out earlier this week and advocated for a cap on the increase possible in local property taxes without a two-thirds vote of voters. He wanted to go down to 2.5%, which is actually further down as a cap than was advocated during the legislative session when the House and the Senate couldn't agree. What do you think about this?
Well, I've been on the other side for a while. I was a county employee.
Right.
And every time they brought one of these unfunded mandates, guess who had to fund it? The local folks. And we can't continue to do that. We need to take some of the responsibility in education, in infrastructure, in all of these things.
Right.
We need to take some of that responsibility so we can relieve the local. So
are you for increasing property taxes, Sheriff?
No, we're just reallocating how we get that.
Explain.
We need to get rid of some of the loopholes. We need to come back to find other areas where we can continually increase and find the fraud. Not only is there loopholes, there's fraud.
So you would permit county officials, local officials, to raise the property taxes without voter approval?
Yes.
You would?
Yes.
Should there be a limit on the degree to which property taxes can be raised?
Of course.
What should the limit
be? There's got to be, and I wouldn't make that decision. I think there's experts in property fields and property management.
Right.
And one of the talents of being a good leader is not depending on your own wisdom for everything.
Yeah.
You need to have other people who are experts at this come and help you make those decisions.
Your principal opponent in this race, Mr. White, last week talked about his view of property taxes in terms of closing the loophole that allows commercial property to be appraised at a lower rate than the dollars that ought to go back into the system. He said that by closing that loophole, that would make available about another $5 billion to be put into things like education. I turned around and said to him, what you're really saying is we're going to raise taxes on business, because if you close a loophole, you're effectively raising taxes. What do you think about that?
There's several things we can talk about here.
Yeah.
Of course, we're going back to the border issue. How much money have we spent there? And when you go down there, or when they show it to some of the folks who go down there, it's big boats with machine guns. All these boats going up and down the river with machine guns. What are you going to do? Start aiming at the people that are coming across with machine gun? That's ridiculous. Personally, I call it boys and their toys versus sensible laws.
So would you advocate for that $800 million that's been allocated in the last two biennial budgets on border security to go down to zero?
No. I would take some of that fund
Right.
and go to the local law enforcement who knows where the crossings are, who
Right.
knows who some of the people who lean toward doing harm, they know
Right.
their area a lot better. I would take some of that funds and help the local law enforcement increase their ability to do something, instead of bringing folks from around the state and put them in an area where they don't know.
Yeah.
And what are you doing to the places where you brought them from? Does that mean that areas in East Texas and West Texas and North Texas now don't have as much law enforcement as it's necessary?
You worry that the unintended effect is that those communities are more dangerous as a result of their law enforcement.
And we can do something in
Right.
those. Nobody
Right.
wants terrorists coming in. Nobody advocates
the net migration numbers at the border, Sheriff, are down.
Yes.
Illegal crossings are
Yes.
down. The governor, lieutenant governor, and Colonel McCraw, the head of DPS, would all say proof of case, that's actually proof that this investment in border security is working. What do you say about that?
They've been doing that for a couple of years, and each time that they bring that, they continue to say proof of case. But the proof of case is the Trump effect, and the effect that a lot of people are afraid to come.
What is the
on
Trump
out.
effect? Explain that, please.
Well, I think a lot of he very clearly said you come in in their own way said,
Right.
if you come in, we're going to put you back, or we're going to bring up the enforcement. So why would you want to come back and you were caught immediately and sent back? And now our local governor has also added on to that. So I think that it's more of a situation of, I want to go over there to have a better quality of life. If I'm constantly in fear, that's not a better quality of life.
So what is your position with regard to folks who want to cross over into this country unlawfully or without documentation? What should the state's position be on people who are here without documentation?
Well, you've asked like 3 questions in that one question.
Answer any one of them, that's
Let's
fine.
go with the ones that are the dreamers.
Yeah.
If this is not their country, they don't have a country. There's certainly where you send them back to when they came as 3 years old. I mean, how much do you remember when you were 3 years old? Not very much.
I was doing this.
Your nose is growing.
Yeah.
Anyway, but they don't know the language, so you're putting them back in a dangerous situation.
Yep.
So and honestly, they don't have a country. You've heard of the old a man without a country. This is a child without a country. This is a young adult without a country, and we can't.
Okay, so dreamers, kids who are brought here, they stay. What about non-kids who are here without documentation? What happens to them? What should happen to them?
I think we need to look at it as in several areas. And please remember, the majority of us Hispanics come from a situation like that. Yeah. I'm not sure if my parents were undocumented, but I know they were citizens. But look at I keep trying to say, if I could only provide this opportunity for everybody else, we'd have a better Texas. And so we have to be able to provide opportunities for the people that are here, for Texans. And quite a while back, we decided to go ahead and educate the folks that were not here. I don't know what the difference is now. They're going to be working here. They're going to be the ones that are also necessary for our skills. Honestly, a lot of our economy depends on the folks that are here working right now.
Right.
Construction, I was reading in the Dallas Morning News where construction is a year behind because they can't get the workers.
Right. 40% of construction labor in the state is immigrant labor, documented and undocumented.
Let's talk about the restaurant industry. Let's talk about the hotel industry. Let's talk about the lawn maintenance industry.
But you understand, Sheriff, that there's a continuum here. Here is basically open borders, anybody gets to come in. Here is anybody here unlawfully, kid, adult, what have you, send them back. Where are you along this continuum?
There's a happy medium.
Where is it? Tell me where your happy medium is.
And again, it's a big challenge. And whatever I decide right now will probably be changed by the time I become governor.
But surely you have a point of view
Yes,
about where
yes,
where along
yes.
that continuum should we regard people who are in this state without
People who
documentation?
come here to do no harm. And this is the same I had when I was in law enforcement. If you come here, you came here for a better quality of life. People who murder, steal, rape, abuse, that's not giving you a better quality of life.
Right.
So those, I have no problem.
People who engage in criminal activity should
I
be
have
sent
no
back.
problem sending them somewhere else. You know,
Right.
sometimes I wish I could do that with the Americans who cause the same harm.
Right.
But I can't.
Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way.
It can't.
So, yeah.
Therefore, we need to, I have no problem with people who come here to help our economy and provide a better life for themselves and wherever they sent the money back.
Right. So you said that you think that we should be educating people who are here without regard to their citizenship, right?
Yes.
Okay. So that would involve offering in-state tuition, presumably,
remember-
as the law currently is in Texas?
Yes, definitely. And that's what we used to do till the, I don't know what happened, the
Right.
opinions changed. But if they continue to stay here, those are the folks that we're going to be using in our labor force later on. We need a skilled labor force.
How far down the list of government services or social services should we be providing folks without documentation? You were asked in that Rio Grande Guardian Facebook Live interview this weekend about driver's licenses for undocumented persons in the state, and you declined to answer. Would you answer now?
I think, yes, definitely I'll answer. The arguments I've heard on that on both sides, one of them is they're going to use that documentation to get other services. Have we ever heard of different colors? You know, we have one color license and somebody else may have another color identification. And the insurance company, of course, has even talked to me on the side and said it would really help if we could insure some of the folks that we know are already driving.
Right.
If they're here for our job facilities, they're going to get to their jobs. They're either going to get public
So
transportation.
you are for driver's licenses for undocumented persons?
Yes.
You are, okay. You said...
With limited access.
What does that mean?
That means that they can't use that driver's license for other things, to vote, to obtain services. And the driver's license would be a different color.
Different color. You've talked about border security funding going down as one way to find money for other programs that you think are underfunded at the moment. Again, the issues tab on your website, the words "we must invest," "we must invest," "we must invest" appear 5-6 times. The state has limited funds. Every state does. There is a cap on how much we have available to us. The only way to spend more money on programs is to either generate more revenue or to spend less on other things. So if you want to spend more on education, it sounds like you want to spend more on infrastructure, water. You mentioned free community college on your website now. That's presumably an expense of some size. Are you talking about reallocating money from other things? Are you talking about generating additional revenue or both?
A little of both.
Okay, where's the additional revenue going to come from?
As I mentioned before, I think it's already been mentioned about the commercial loopholes.
So that's one thing.
That's one thing.
Okay.
Another one would be some of the, for instance, it hurt me to read about some of the things that were going on, such as airplane rights to another state to go to a convention without them continuing to do work here.
Right. So you're talking about waste and fraud. You're talking about the Texas Alcoholic Beverage Commission, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, there are some things
Is there
that are
enough
not
money
necessary.
in waste and fraud that's going to
There's
get you a meaningful increase?
Quite a bit. Let's look at the...
Must be a hell of a convention.
I've heard that it was. They were talking about drinking.
Right,
They were talking about all their drinking.
Right.
And of course, the Texas Ag Commissioner and his going to Oklahoma to get his Jesus juice. I think one of the things that is important is the person in charge needs to set the standard, needs to set the ethics, and say, this is not allowed. You are wasting government money.
Right.
One of the things I did when I took over the department was take away a lot of what they considered rights of my position.
Right.
That wasn't rights. Taking a car home to another county is not a right.
So you would go through state government, go through the budget, and take away perks and take away instances that you consider to be unnecessary waste, fraud, and abuse, and that would at least create some
Yes.
of the money.
Yes.
Would you take a tax increase, Sheriff, off the table? Would you ever advocate for a tax increase for the purpose of generating more revenue?
You know, at this time, I'm not sure I could totally answer that. I would have necessarily.
You understand not saying that you would take it off the table means that you're open to it.
Yes.
So you are saying you are open to increasing taxes?
Yes, if necessary.
Would you consider a state income tax being an advocate similarly, although you
No,
couldn't as governor
no,
be the advocate?
no,
You couldn't
no,
do it? No
no.
state income tax?
No.
Would you consider some sort of an increase in the sales tax or a swap out of the sales and property tax? Where would you consider an opportunity to rethink the tax code?
Again, there's certain areas that you can just go and immediately find solutions. And there are other areas that you're going to have to dig down
Yep.
and help people and ask for people to come and help you find areas where we can continue
But no
to
specific
increase.
taxes you want to name that you would look at potentially?
Not right now.
You just keep the door open to it?
Of course.
Okay.
We keep the door open to a lot of stuff.
So, criminal...
Come on in.
Come on in, all right. Criminal justice is an area that you have some expertise.
Yes, sir.
I want to ask you about, you've said, the phrase you've used is, I'm a law and order Democrat, but with a heart. That's what you've said.
Perfect.
Right. What does that mean exactly? There's a conversation right now going on in the state that actually is weirdly bipartisan, unlike a lot of other issues, where the right and the left view criminal justice reform as something that they can get on the same page on.
Mm-hmm.
What is the biggest problem as you view it through the experience of the lens of your experience?
It's
with
hard to
criminal
say
justice?
one problem is the biggest problem,
Right.
because there's several. There's the mentally ill.
Yeah.
You know, and Houston is in the same condition. We ran the largest mental health facility
Basically,
in the county.
the psych wards are the county jails.
Exactly.
Right, yeah.
And that shouldn't be the case.
Right.
Jails are for people we're afraid of, not for people we're upset with.
Right.
When somebody commits a minor crime, we get upset with them. They throw a brick through your window, you get upset with them. You have to call the insurance, you have to take time off from work, you have to find how to fix it, but you're not afraid of them.
Yeah.
That's a crime that we can find other sources than to put them in jail.
So does that require the state to invest more in mental health services to take some of the heat off of criminal justice?
Now, what I was discussing on the minor crime is not the mentally ill. There's
Okay.
two different things.
Okay.
Yeah, and somebody's investing in mental health because we're already doing it.
Right.
It's already there.
Yeah.
The county's paying for what I'd consider one of the best mental health facilities in the area.
Yep.
We actually had folks that brought them back to competency and they were able to stand trial after that. Before that, you can't stand trial. So you've got them there taking up the time, and it costs money while they're there.
Right.
So that's a big expense for the county. It's already happening. Those funds are coming from somewhere.
Right.
So we need to do something to take that away from the criminal justice system and make the mental health system. As you said, I think that's another area where there's a lot of agreement between the two parties.
Sheriff, you know that there's been a conversation, not just since Sandra Bland, although the Sandra Bland incident definitely raised this up, elevated this on the agenda of items to be discussed. There's concern about whether law enforcement and communities of color can ever find common cause. There's concern that possibly law enforcement is, if you go all the way out to the end, just outright racist. The black community has expressed concerns again since Sandra Bland about the degree to which they're going to get treated fairly. There's been a discussion of traffic stops, drivers of color versus Anglo drivers. You are a law enforcement professional, have been for many years, of color.
Yes.
So you have an interesting perspective on this. Do you believe that
Yes.
law enforcement in the main is racist in the state of Texas?
No, I don't believe that they're racist. I believe that they're allowed certain things that they shouldn't be allowed.
Okay, name those.
The leadership makes the decision as to what is okay and what is not okay. When I took over the department, it was common knowledge that there was some abuse.
Yep.
But when you set the standard and say this is the standard, and if you don't meet the standard, then you're going to lose your job. Let me tell you one of the things that affected me a lot. When I got into law enforcement over 40 years ago, my family and I had a huge argument As a matter of fact, I remember walking out, and there was anger between us because I was going to join law enforcement. And
They saw law enforcement as not
Yes,
as the enemy
yes.
or as a problem?
As a problem.
As a problem.
Now, please remember, I'm 70 years old. You know, when I was growing up, it was the 40s and the 50s and some of the 60s when I was still at home.
Right.
My father, because of who he was a citizen, but because of the way he looked and the way he spoke, there was some strong discrimination against him.
Do you think that's still the case today, Sheriff? Someone who looks like your father and speaks like your father today would be discriminated against?
It would depend on the department. I honestly think that the majority of us are trying to do what is right. And as I said time and time again, 95% of law enforcement tries daily to serve and protect. I've said this 1,000 times. I put on that badge to serve and protect, not to hate and discriminate.
Last week, after my conversation with your opponent, Mr. White, he told a group of reporters at the Austin Club that he was opposed to the death penalty. Mm-hmm. That is obviously an issue that, although Texas is still the killingest state in the country, we are executing many fewer people today than we were in the heyday of the death penalty. There's a lot of discussion these days around potential alternatives to capital punishment in Texas, but it is still the law. We still do execute people. In fact, I think I read on the Tribune website that we're getting ready to execute somebody first of the year here pretty soon. Do you join Mr. White in calling for the end to the death penalty?
I think one of the biggest problems there is we're killing the wrong people at times.
How do you know?
Because several of those have been exonerated who were
correct
in jail, and had spent a lot of time in jail. There's even one person that we know of that was put to death and then later proven by his DNA that he wasn't the person.
So what's the answer to this?
The answer is we cannot continue to be in a situation where we risk killing an innocent person.
Which means?
No death penalty.
So you are against the death penalty?
Yes.
Okay. Let me ask you about why you're a Democrat. That may seem like a strange question, but at some point everybody,
it is a strange question.
You know, Coke, Pepsi, hot dogs, hamburgers, at some point you make a choice. Maybe RC Cola, you know, maybe you decide to be a libertarian. Why are you a Democrat?
I often joke and say, look at me, you know, gay, Hispanic, you know, I mean, just name the list. And I have some friends who say, you're everything the other side hates. And I wouldn't go that far. But I also had a very humble beginning. And somewhere along the way, someone always encouraged and often helped me. That's what I think the Democratic Party does.
You know, overnight, Governor Abbott, Gromer Jeffers of the Dallas Morning News published a story overnight about Governor Abbott's intention to more actively pursue the Hispanic vote in this election than he did last time, when by some studies he got 44% of the Hispanic vote, outright won the votes of Hispanic men against Wendy Davis in 2014. He said, Gromer reports, that he said he believes that your policies are too liberal, and that as a result of that, Hispanics are going to be more open to the idea of supporting a Republican, because specifically, your advocate, no matter what you look like, no matter the fact that you may be Latina, that Hispanics are not reflexively simply going to vote for a Hispanic candidate, that they're going to look at the policies, and those policies are better Republican policies. What do you say about that?
Of course I will disagree. Yeah. You know, they can look at the policies, and as we're going down, we're talking about our policy. What is it that we're reflecting? Coming from humble beginnings, getting educated, going to the military, becoming a federal agent, then becoming a sheriff for 13 years.
Right.
This is a stepping stone that most Hispanics would love to have. Let's open the door and give them the opportunity. But not only Hispanics. In North Texas, there was 239 different languages spoken. English and Spanish were only but two of them. So there's a lot of people that are looking, including the Anglos and the Hispanics and the African Americans. There's a lot of others that are looking for opportunities.
In order for you to run against Governor Abbott in the fall, Sheriff, you have to get through the primary first. There are 8 other candidates running in a Democratic primary. It is widely assumed that Mr. White is your chief opponent. What do you think about him? I asked him what he thought about you last week. He said she's a nice lady. I just met her the other day. What do you think about him?
He's a nice man.
Is he a nice gent? Is he? Okay.
He's a nice
but
man.
seriously, what do you think about him? Does he strike you as somebody who is qualified, capable, who you would be able to support as governor?
You know, I would never say that somebody is not totally unqualified. But what I am saying is that I have more experience than he does.
Okay.
Of course, I already ran
Right.
a huge government
Right.
department, and I've already had that opportunity. And I've also had the opportunity of knowing what it feels like to not have.
Right.
There was times when I had to make the decision, do I make my payment for college, or do I buy a decent meal other than peanut butter and jelly or whatever was
So is
available?
Mr. White less qualified to be governor, sheriff, because he happens to, his name is White, okay? Are you going to litigate this as he's
No,
the candidate
no.
of white privilege, he had a middle class or upper middle class upbringing, I worked the fields with my family, and so we're going to litigate that along those lines?
I think we need to let the people decide. I don't think whatever we say is going to make any difference. I think we need to let the people decide.
Some women's groups and some progressive groups, at least early on, jumped Mr. White over the question of choice, abortion. Mr. White has said and continues to say, I am personally pro-life, but he has also said, I have no intention of allowing government to in any way affect the laws that keep abortion legal and give women access to reproductive services. You have a problem with that?
Evan, if I told you what to do with your body, what would you tell me?
Doesn't sound like Mr. White is telling anybody what to do with their body. He's just offering his personal point of view. Is it okay for him to be personally pro-life, but say that he believes from a political standpoint that women should be allowed to do what they want?
I'm not going to jump into what another Democrat is saying. I'm more interested in what I'm saying.
Well, are you playing golf or tennis? You're running against somebody. You're not
I am
playing the
running
game
against
alone.
them, but I don't have to be. I don't have to beat up a person to beat them. I think
Would you be comfortable voting for somebody? Well, let me ask you this way. Would you be comfortable voting for a candidate who is personally pro-life but pledged to stay out of that from a policy standpoint?
I would be comfortable in voting for the person that the Democrats chose.
So regardless of who it is?
I think the people are smart enough to make good decisions.
Right.
And I'm not going to.
So whoever it is, you'll support the nominee?
Of course.
Last question before we open it up to the audience. Fundraising numbers just came out. Mm-hmm. You and Mr. White got in the race at roughly the same time. You on December 6th, he on December 7th. You raised about $46,000 in the last part of December. He raised about $200,000. People have commented in looking at your fundraising numbers that they were anemic and weak, and they believe that that shows that your campaign is unable to raise money and that you cannot have enough money possibly to be competitive. Right now, Greg Abbott, by the estimates of one reporter, has 1,000 times the cash on hand that you do.
Well,
talk about that. Why should those
my
fundraising
goodness.
numbers not be seen as a sign for concern by Democrats?
First of all, I was the sheriff till the 31st. Though I announced on the 6th, I continued to be the 2.5 weeks ago.
But you were
I
allowed
left
to
my job.
fundraise during the month of December, were you not?
Well, we needed to give attention to the department. I did not want to leave the department with people saying or criticizing that she's spending more time being the campaign person than she is taking care of the department as she leaves.
Right.
I don't like the idea of people leaving something just because they're leaving it at its worst.
Okay.
You need to continue to take care of the department, and I did that to the very last day.
So that's why you didn't raise more.
That means that between the first and well, that was the end of the.
Okay. So you've been in the race for 3 more weeks. So
Yes.
you were in the race for 3
Yes.
weeks while you were still sheriff. Let me take you at your word that being sheriff for those 3 weeks was an obstacle. You've now been not sheriff for 3 weeks, and you've been a pretty prominent candidate for governor. How much have you raised so far?
I think we're raising about 300 to 500 a day, which
Are you going to be able to compete against the Abbott behemoth at 300 to 500 a day?
Please, that's going to go up. Give me a chance. At least some of these people are going to hear, and they're going to pass the word, and I hope others. But I'm real uncomfortable when they continue to tell me that he's got gazillion money. That almost says somebody's buying that position. What are those people asking in return? If you look at my fundraising now, it's 25, 35, 100, 200, 250, and it's going to continue to come in at that. I'm not indebted to anyone for that position. I'm a little uncomfortable when there is so much money coming from one individual, wondering what it is that individual expects in return. Everybody wants some investment for their money. If you give me $250, there's not much investment you're going to get back from the state of Texas for $250.
Got it. Let's go to audience questions for the balance of our time. We have a microphone. We're going to walk around, and we'll be happy to bring you into the conversation. Sir.
Hi, good evening, Sheriff. Good morning, Sheriff.
Good morning.
My name is Seth. I also was checking your website every day and was sort of stunned that there weren't any policies, and I didn't check it this morning. But while we were sitting here, I scrolled through, and as Mr. Smith said, a lot of wishes, but not a lot of specifics about how to fund. I also saw the interview you did with the Rio Grande Guardian on Sunday. So let me ask you one thing about an area that you have expertise in. What are the 3 C's in terms of dealing with the prisoners? You talked about that.
3 C's.
The 3 C's.
Yes.
Care, custody, and control.
Care, custody, and
But
control.
let me add on that. Please let me add on that.
Sure.
When I took over the department, I don't know how to better phrase it than it was a good old boy system. And there was a lot of harm done to the individual. One of those that I thought was a good old boy continued in the department. About 2 months before I left, he was the speaker to the new correctional officers. And he said, you know, everybody knows the 3 C's of corrections. But since this sheriff has been in office, there's a 4th C. And that 4th C is compassion. We need to continue to have law and order, but with a heart. I don't see how anybody can be a strong advocate of law and order if they don't also have a heart. That almost feels like total abuse.
All right. Sir.
Good morning, Sheriff.
Good morning.
I was encouraged by what you've been saying on the issues. One issue you all just touched upon was money in politics. I think another issue that's a systemic issue that's been highlighted, particularly by the last election, is how much we're a non-voting state. There aren't a lot of, there isn't as much participation as we'd like. It's my understanding in Oregon, there's a law on the books that when you get your driver's license, if you're a citizen, you're automatically registered to vote. Would you support measures like that? Is that something that you would champion as a governor to make it easier to vote?
I've said time and time again, this is not a red state, it's a non-voting state. And I think as we continue to be more of a voting state, there's going to be more of an effort to stop us from voting. Because as we continue to vote, there's going to be more and more people to really look at the issues.
How do you change that calculation? I remember being in Tony Sanchez's map room in Laredo before the 2002 governor's race, where he had it all laid out on the wall. Here are the percentage of counties in Texas where the Hispanic vote is below 50%. Here are the percentage where they're eligible to vote but non-voting or blank. And he basically said, if I just get a small percentage of the people
we have
who
those
are,
maps
right,
too.
low-hanging fruit. If I just go in,
We have those
there's
maps
no way
too.
mathematically Rick Perry can win. We know what happened. We have a tradition in this state, as the gentleman said, whether it's a red state or a non-voting state, getting people to come out to vote in Texas has been very difficult for Democrats over the last 25 years. Why do you change that? How do you change
There's
that?
2 things. The national scene is going to help us quite a bit. But the other thing
You're going to nationalize this race?
No, of course not.
But you say the national scene is going to help you.
We're going to have a women's march on Saturday.
Right.
There's going to be a huge women's. When did we have those women marches before? We've never had them before. Yet the people are coming out to say, you know, we're upset with this. I think one of the reasons...
Got to get those people to vote, though.
Exactly, and that's where I'm going. I think one of the reasons that people are so upset was because they didn't vote. And if they had voted, there would have been a total different outcome. Now, there's things that we have to do to get that vote out. Of course, social media is going to be a strong part of that. We need to continue to do strong social media to show where we're standing and what we're doing.
Yeah.
And to answer the gentleman's question, of course, I would approve some, even one of those states where if you come to register, if you go to college or whatever you do and applying for that, you also are eligible to vote. You get the application to vote, and you become, if eligible, you're eligible to vote within the time period asked. We need to have those people voting because as we get bigger and bigger in Texas, I think it's going to be more of a progressive state. I have great hopes for us being a progressive state. This is a great state, and Texas has got a wonderful brand if we continue to improve on that brand. And it's got to be a brand that says, we're open to your talents, we're open to your skills, we're open to your abilities, no matter what you look like, or how you happen to come in here, or walk into this room, or whatever you happen to do. We're open to you to be able to give us your talents.
Sir.
Diversity provides a lot of talent.
Sir.
Good morning, Sheriff. My name is Luke Metzger. I'm with
There you are.
Environment Texas. Scientists have said that the record rainfall from Hurricane Harvey was made 3 times more likely because of global warming. Governor Abbott has questioned the science of climate change and has actively campaigned and fought against local and federal actions to address climate change. As governor, what would you do?
You know, from the very beginning, I took science, as long as I can remember buying these notebooks for science. And as I read them, I understood what they were trying to explain. So I am a strong believer in science. I also want to listen to what people have to say. As I mentioned before,
Yeah.
there are more experts than me. I am not the jack of all trades. I am a good leader. I am a good negotiator. I am good at bringing people together. But I don't know everything. And one of the things that I am very comfortable in listening to is the science.
So you believe in climate change?
Yes.
You believe in climate science?
Yes.
You believe the state policy should bend in the direction of climate science as a driver of so many policies that then come from that?
We should definitely be ahead of the issues instead of trailing behind after we may not have believed that they happen. Trailing behind them, we need to be ahead of them.
Okay. Ma'am.
Hi, Sheriff.
Hi.
My name is Susan Nelson. I'm actually a
Hi, Susan.
survivor of gun violence, and I live with a bullet in my brain. I've worked very hard on getting some common sense policies for gun storage and things that help support our sheriff and our law enforcement. What is your feel on that as far as what can Texas do to move forward and be a leader in common sense gun policies that still respect the Second Amendment?
Well, there's 2 things there. First of all, this is Texas. You know, I think one of the first gifts that people get, especially in the rural areas, for the snakes and everything else, is a BB gun or something. But, and there's always a but, I don't want to say but, we need to be careful of the people who cannot have disagreements other than reaching for an instrument other than their words. We need to be very careful with the people who use weapons for discussions instead of being able to discuss sensibly.
You believe in the Second Amendment?
Yes, but I also believe that there are characters, and in law enforcement, when a person commits a crime and an officer shows aggressive behavior or stressful behavior, the weapon is taken away from them. They're not allowed to continue on the streets with a weapon, although they have a right above the norm to carry a weapon.
So you were sheriff of Dallas County when open carry and campus carry passed the legislature in 2015. Are you for or against open carry?
I'm against open carry.
Are you for or against campus carry?
I'm against campus carry. I am for concealed. My goodness, I've been in law enforcement for 42 years. A weapon is part of my getting dressed. You know, if I put on my shoes, I put on my socks, I put on my weapon. You know, that's part of who I am. But you also have to be sensible in anything.
Yep.
People who drive recklessly, DWI, their car is taken away. That's a weapon. You know, people who in sports activities start swinging with a bat, you know, they're removed.
So so let's be specific I know we have to end here. As we're specific about this, would you be for increased background checks
Of course
on gun
we'd be for
purchases?
that.
Would you be for a ban on high-capacity magazines?
Yes.
You would?
Yes.
Any other gun policy laws that you would be an advocate for?
I think we have to
Restrictions
be,
on gun
I-
access?
My officers have to go to a mental health check almost every several years. Anytime they advance to another situation, they have to go through a mental background check in the stress and their aggressiveness
Yeah.
and the way they behave. And they're allowed to carry guns, knives, and even high-powered weapons. But they're checked constantly.
Yep.
And if there's any behavior that begins to show that they may misuse that, immediately they're removed. There's nothing wrong with a weapon, as a lot of folks say, But what's wrong is the way some folks want to use it. Any person with aggressive behavior that cannot solve their issues other than reaching for a gun doesn't need to have a weapon.
Okay. We have to end right here. Sheriff Valdez, thank you very much for the time that you've given us today. Give her a big hand. Thank all of you.
Thank
We'll
you.
see you again.
Thank you.